Hello everybody, it's Jen. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Thanks for joining me for another project for Not Too Shabby Shop. Here's your coupon code that you can use to save 10% off your purchase, and this is the card that I'm going to be making today. So my design team stamp for the month of August is another Penguin Palace stamp set. I am in love with this company. And this stamp set is called Let's Get Crafty, and it's all about crafts and art and crafting, and there's kitties. So, I mean, my two favorite things. I just couldn't pass up using this particular stamp set. So we're going to get started here with the coloring. I'm doing sort of a medium skin tone for our little crafty artist here. So I'm going to use E15 as my darkest, E13 and E11 as my two midtones, and then E00 as my highlight color. You saw there, I just went in with my darkest and mapped out where I wanted the darkest shadows to be, so those would fall under her hairline and around her little palette there, and then under her clothing for her legs. I did go ahead and give her a little bit of blush with the R20, and then I'm going to blend that out with the E00, and then we can move on to the hair. So I thought I would do her hair in a brunette color. My darkest here is E25, and I'm going in with that first just along the line of the hat, and then where that little V is to the right hand side of her hair. My darkest midtone is the E35, my lightest midtone the E34, and then I'm using the E31 as my highlight. Now I did one coat of that and felt like I had too much of the dark blended out when I used the lighter colors, so I did go back over that a second time. I am using a flicking motion here, trying to get some lines in her hair for some dimension. I wanted to keep the palette fairly kind of in those brown tones because I am doing a rainbow theme card, so there's going to be lots of pops of color. So I wanted to keep lots of brown tones, like I said. So for the easel here, I'm using the combination of E33, E53, and E51. I went ahead and colored this in with my lightest, which is the E51, then mapped out my darkest with the E33 and blended that out with the E53, which is what I'm doing here now. Once I get that done, I'll bring the E51 back and I will go ahead and blend all of that out. So I'm sort of leaving the highlights to the outer sides of the easel. No rhyme or reason. I wasn't really worried about light source here. And I'm going to color the palette for the paint and the bottom handles of the paint brushes in this same color combination. I really like to keep similar colors throughout my card just to have some continuity throughout the images. Plus, who wants to have 100 markers out on their desk? So I just do this for ease, but I really like the lighter brown color here in contrast to her hair color. So I'm just grabbing my Memento Tuxedo black marker here, and I wanted to add little spots where it looks like there's paint on the top of her paint brushes, and I'm going in rainbow order here, except I am introducing a pink color at the beginning. So I'm coloring in pink, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, and these areas are so small I'm just using one color here. I wanted to make this part of the paintbrush look like it was metal, so I'm using the C7 and the C5 for those areas on the paintbrushes. I wanted the little painting here to look like it was canvas, so I am going to color that white. I'm adding some really dark shadows to the corners of the painting. I did a little bit of C5 there, blended that out with the C3, and then I'm now blending that out with the C1 marker, and then I'll go ahead and I'll use my colorless blender just to push back some of that color. I also added some white into that little area of the palette, which I felt like it could be where you would kind of put your finger. So I didn't want to color that in one of the paint colors. For the kitty, I decided to do some warm grays, just nice and simple coloring. This will also go with that kind of monochromatic brown color combination that I'm doing, in addition to the bright pops of color. So I used the Warm Gray 9 as my darkest, Warm Gray 7 as my darkest midtone, and then Warm Gray 5 as my lightest midtone, and then the W3 is my highlight color. Keeping the highlight to the kind of middle front of our kitty's face here. Once I get the kitty colored up, I will go ahead and add some pink color to the ears and the little nose, and then also give our kitty cat some blush as well. I'm using the R20, which I also used for our little artist as well. So then I decided I wanted to do the paintbrushes brown. I had skipped to the kitty because I didn't know what color I wanted them. At first I brought in the E25 and the E35, but I didn't feel like that was giving me a dark enough contrast. So I brought in the E27 and then blended that out with the E35, skipping the E25 on that second time. For our little outfit here, I decided to go with some bright colors. So I'm doing her little hat in yellow and scarf. Now you may have already noticed here that I have made a little bit of a mistake. I haven't noticed it yet, but I believe the front panels on this little girl to the right and the left are actually her scarf hanging down. But I wanted it to look like she was wearing like a painter's smock. So I was thinking that I would leave those areas for the next color. And you'll see here, I realized that in fact, one of those at least needs to be the scarf. So you notice for my darkest colors for the yellow, I am bringing in the YR4. This will give me some nice contrast. Now, here's where I make a mistake and realize that's not supposed to be purple. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use my colorless blender. I wanted to see if I could get that color up. If I couldn't, I was just going to color it all purple and just go for it because I'd colored so much of the image already. And there I was pausing because I was trying to figure out if that if that left hand side was also part of her scarf, but I really wanted her to have like a purple painter's smock on, like I was saying, and then like she had a little dress on underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and you'll see here, I'm going to color that little middle portion of her clothing white, and I am going to bring in my cool grays here to do a white paint tube. I'll use those for the lid of the paint as well, leaving that middle center area for some color. So here's where I'm going to do her clothing. I'm just letting that paper dry there where I use the colorless blender. So here I'm going to bring in the blues. Now don't pay attention to this picture frame or the kitty to the right hand side. I'm not going to end up using them on this card. And I really did not like the way I colored either of them up. So I am going to skip through the kitty coloring and most of this painting, but because I did the blue in the paint tube and the blue in the painting at the same time, I left that part in. So here's where I'm going to go back and try to fix this piece of the scarf. Now, I probably should have let it dry a little bit longer, but I was impatient, but it turned out okay. It's slightly darker than her scarf, but I think that works fine because her palette would cast a shadow. So I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm moving on now to the little bucket for the paintbrushes. I decided to do that in red. So I'm using R89 as my darkest, R29 as my darkest midtone, R24 as my lightest midtone, and then R22 as my highlight color there just to blend everything together. So now I can go ahead here and work on the background. I'm using this Splatter stencil from Altenew, and I'm going to create a background panel here. This will be my focal panel for the images. So I'm going to go ahead and use my purple tape here, and I'm just going to adhere the piece of cardstock onto the stencil from the back. I'm just using some Recollections 110-pound cardstock for this. And I'm using Distress Oxides in Salty Ocean, Candied Apple, Wilted Violet, and Carved Pumpkin. I wasn't sure if all of the colors of the rainbow would fit onto this card panel. You'll see that I will bring in a few more colors here once I get these down, but these are the 4 that I wanted to start with. So I went ahead and I'm using my makeup brushes here. This is a smaller makeup brush. The set that I purchased from Amazon has a number of different sizes in it, and the smaller brush is perfect for the stencil. I'm just going ahead and I'm cleaning off the makeup brush in between my colors with my microfiber cloth, and then I can move right on to the next color. My Candied Apple for some reason was not producing ink. I don't know if it's drying out a little bit. So you see there I had to work quite hard to get that ink flowing, but once I got it onto my brush, it worked great. I'm just trying to spread out the colors. If I put it, to the left side, then I want to balance it out on the right side. Here's where I realized I did have room for some more colors. So I brought in Mowed Lawn, picked raspberry, and mustard seed. And I'm just going to finish off these paint splatters here with these 3 colors. Now these colors match the paints that I colored on the paint palette. So it brings some continuity between her little artist palette and the card. So just finishing up here with the Mowed Lawn, and I'm just going and I'm going to add this green color wherever there was spots left on the stencil. And then once I get these put away, I'll peel off the purple tape on the back of the stencil, and here's what the panel looks like. I did end up cutting that out with a stitched, not a circle, a stitched oval, and that's going to be my focal panel. I'm using a piece of rainbow paper from, this paper is Sunny Studio Rainbow Bright. I'm not sure if it's still available, but I will link all the products below for you if you're interested in seeing those products a bit more closely. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere all of my elements down to the card. And you may have noticed when I put down the easel, I went a little bit too much over to the left in comparison when I had laid them out at the beginning to kind of plan where I wanted these images. So my images are going to be slightly over to the left more than I would have wanted to have them. But you'll see how I fix that there, or at least attempt to. So for the little girl and the paint tube, I'm popping them up on some foam adhesive. The other elements I just laid down right on the paper with some liquid adhesive. Here's where I'm going to try to balance this out. I went ahead and I cut the sentiment that said, "Let's get crafty," so I could position them on top of each other. And I'm just using my Versafine Clair Nocturne ink. I'm going to stamp that a couple times. And I'm hoping that that kind of balances out that panel a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and adhere this onto my card base. I tried to adhere it this way. I just can't get it straight when I do it like that. I need to flip my card sideways. I don't know why. It's just one of those things. So here I flipped it the way that I'm comfortable with, and I get it straight, which makes me really happy. And now I can move on to the final touches. So I did get some carved pumpkin ink on my little paint tube here. I'm just using my sand eraser to get that ink up. And then I thought it would be fun to add some Nouveau Crystal Glaze. This is very similar to Glossy Accents, but I find it doesn't clog and it's a little bit thinner, so it moves a lot easier. This is new to me and I'm really loving it. So I went ahead and put the crystal glaze on top of all of the ink splatters, And then I'm bringing in my black gel pen for the eyes. This is a glaze pen, so it will give a raised effect. And then I'm bringing in my white gel pen. No big surprise here. I'm going to add some highlight details. And I'm also going to add little white spots back into the eyes, which is how the stamps are drawn to begin with. So there's the card for today. I hope you liked it. I'm hoping to do another card with this stamp this month because I just love it so much. So let me know what you think about this stamp set and this card down in the description box below. And here are a couple more videos that you can check out if you want to see some more creations by me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And thanks again so much for joining me. As always, I appreciate you all. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you really soon. Bye!